Forsooth, it is yonder podcast known as Feature Please, a hateful voyage to the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph of Rhodes.
I'm just your co-host, Peter.
You're gonna go on the Greek drama.
It's honestly been so
me.
long since we've recorded one of these, I forgot about that bit.
Yeah, it has been a few weeks, but we've both had to deal with a few semi-regular interruptions. For me, work. For you, having children.
Spawning does take time, yes.
Kind of comes up every so often for us.
Yeah.
Happy to see things went well and that the away team over there has expanded by one more member.
Yeah, man, we could 5-man video games now. One man, 4 women. I'm outnumbered pretty.
Listen, I'm just glad you got that Mythic Dungeon crew ready to roll in maybe 12 or 13 years. You know, that's good. That's important.
It is, and we'll be there for it. A little bit of pain to go around. My wife in labor. Some of our listeners in fates worse.
I would say that in the hierarchy of painful things, childbirth is pretty high up there, but I don't know if it beats having to watch Star Trek Picard. Shout out to our mutual friend Michael, who has been talking quite a bit in the trauma support group about finally getting around to watching some episodes of Picard and taking us all through the memories with him.
Going through the throes. The painful part about Picard is that there's no gun to your head to watch it, but you do it anyways. A while ago, my sister was going through her cosmetology program and she needed experience doing back waxing, and I have a very hairy back. And I said, "Oh, okay, I'll let you do this."
You are a good brother. As far as I'm concerned, that's top tier. Go on.
Yeah. I'm like, should I shave it? No, just leave it long. Do not leave your back hair long if you're going to go through waxing. It makes it way worse. And she slathers it up and she pulls the first piece of adhesive off. And it fucking sucks, man. It's like 8 or 9 on the 10-point pain scale. I'm like, holy shit, this is terrible. And it only got worse as it went on. And it didn't have to go on. I could have just said, stop, get off me. But I can't just have a rectangular hairless patch on my otherwise hairy back. So I endured it, not because medically I had to, but because the vanity in me required it. And that's what really makes it hurt, is when I don't need to go through this pain. I'm doing this to myself needlessly. That's watching Picard.
You are a poet, my friend. You are able to capture the essence of having to watch Picard and the pain that it brings on to you and your friends and your family, and the very burden that you carry on your soul. I can never match it. However, I will say that upon recollection, it really is Raffi that crystallizes everything I hate about that show. But the less said, the better. And
I'm glad we did it. Just before we move on, I don't like thinking about it or talking about it. I'm glad we did it. I'm glad it's in writing, and I'm glad we've got the experience under our belt so we can shoo people towards that if ever they unlock the hell cube that is Picard.
Sometimes painful lessons are needed. They're necessary. And we had a painful lesson. Mm. But you know what was a relatively pleasant lesson? This week's episode.
Season 6, episode 22, Muse. Joe, I want to say this is another one of those strange Voyager episodes that on paper and conceptually should suck, and somehow watching it is pretty great.
It is equal parts extremely well produced and interesting, as well as another equal portion batshit insane. And in a couple different ways, in what happens on screen and the meta that they sort of convey through the episode to an ending that defies all description. So to me, this is best of both worlds. It's actually a great and interesting idea for a Star Trek episode and a lot of fun to talk about.
I want to throw a hypothesis out there, and I want you to mull it over as we start talking about this. I feel that this is a spiritual successor to, was it Dr. Tinker, Poet, Playwright, or whatever?
Tinker Tailor, Dr. Spy.
Right, with the potato people.
Yes.
I feel that this is another episode where it's the writer's room talking directly to the fan base and maybe mocking them to a certain extent.
There's a bit of that for sure. In fact, I would say that there is one scene in particular that is extremely explicitly doing that when they have the quote unquote Tuvok scene. That screams the writers wanted to get this message out to the viewers and make a fucking point and put an exclamation point on it. There's also the sort of writer's idealism that's expressed through the very premise of the episode, that the play at the heart of the episode can change the fate of this planet, which is exactly the kind of egotistical crap a bunch of Hollywood writers would actually think about their writing. I mean, it's dead ass, right? Like, that's just the way they work. So
this is Joe Manofsky writing. This is Mike V'ger directing. This is first aired the 26th of April, Y2K.
The opener of this belays its, I think, excellent production values. It is clearly a ancient Greek-esque play, complete with a chorus of narrators in the background, the Greek chorus, and they are for some reason doing a captain's log from Voyager. It's very, this archaic setting that this is happening in, complete with masks and robes and a sort of Greek flair to things. So immediately there's something fucky has happened. These people should probably not know these things that they're saying, because it is a captain's log about a Delta Flyer mission for dilithium that has gone wrong, and Harry, Kim, and B'Elanna are mentioned in this, and B'Elanna has crash landed somewhere in the flyer, most likely nearby, and these people have discovered the story.
We get introduced to an important figure in the story. He is a fat Roman emperor-ish type.
Yes.
He will also become known as the Voyager audience.
Correct.
So he's just another fat Star Trek fan.
He's a fat Star Trek fan who occasionally throws money at these poor, starving, over-talented writers.
And he makes
Continue
demand.
to dance for me, monkey. I want more of this.
More Trek every week. Prepared for syndication. Make it so. So they go through a real quick, like you said, a captain's log. We find out that she's lost. The patron, fat Star Trek fan, stands up, clapping. He loves it. We have the main protagonist of this episode step forward. I have no idea what his name is. I call him well, we're going to go with Mr. 90s Hair.
Mr. 90s Hair? I was going to say 60% rapey.
No. What?
I mean, it does have her tied down and is trying to not let her leave to extract, stories out of her.
Well, when you put it that way. So Mr. 90s Hair is our William Shakespeare of sorts, and Emperor Trek fan says, yeah, I like this. I want more. You're going to do more of these. You got 1 week. Make it so. And then he pieces out.
In fact, he does say, prepare this weekly for syndication.
That's what I'm saying, man. I'm telling you.
I forgot it was that on the nose.
Uh-huh.
Get back out there and write another one.
So the acting troupe is kind of like, wow, can we do it? And Mr. 90s Hair says, hey, I got to go find my inspiration. And he treks off into the woods where...
Not before he does the standard thing, which is his lady wants to jump his bones, but he wants to go work. And so he says, no, I don't have time. Listen, as a person who exists in the real world, I know, you know, we all know two things. One, that guy would not say no. Two, it's not going to take that long. All right? I don't care if you are an Adonis. You're talking not that fucking long. You've got the time.
Hey, listen, these aliens of wherever, Greekonia, maybe mating's like a 2-week thing for them. You don't know. Maybe there's like a knot that swells up and it takes like...
Okay, you got me. They've got Delta Quadrant shit on their head, so God only knows what's going on down below.
Yeah, the shit on their face, it's vaguely Cardassian.
I know we're getting ahead of ourselves slightly, but I do like the conceit that B'Elanna just shows up in the story eventually, and Kels is like, "Here's my friend from the East." It's just B'Elanna with a fucking cloak, barely even
Mm-hmm.
covering her like her
Not even a
insignia.
headband.
Yeah,
Not even a
not
headband.
bothering to, and no one even mentions it. Of like, oh, you got different weird shit on your head. Whatever. I mean, I guess that'll
Speaking of aliens,
sure.
I gotta
Welcome to
break
the
out.
club.
I meant to bring this up before we started talking about the episode. Resident Alien, which is Robert Duncan McNeil's new thing he's doing for sci-fi, is fucking great. I've been
Is
watching
it?
that with it's so good.
Huh.
And for all the hand-wringing white guilt that Robert Duncan McNeil drips out whenever he's talking about it on Delta Flyers, like they've got some pretty bold jokes. And, there's certainly, it has its woke moments or whatever, but it is a great show that I have thoroughly enjoyed with my wife, and I highly recommend people check that out.
Huh.
Um,
So it's a Sci-Fi Channel original show.
yeah, but I mean, they don't really skimp on the special effects, and Alan, what's his name, Alan Tudyk, is that how you say it?
Yes.
Fucking kills in it. Everybody else is a no name, which is fine because they all do pretty well, but that's good. And in that one, they are genuinely concerned, like, hey, I look like a fucking alien, maybe I better blend in. But yeah, Muse, not so much. She's wearing a cloak. She doesn't even pull the cloak up over her face to like have it mysteriously only show like the Batman portion of her mouth. She's just there like, hey, what's up? I'm just an alien. Everybody's like, cool.
Not a word is mentioned. Later on, in fact, dude's girlfriend goes to the Delta Flyer to confront her and is not in any way, shape, or form concerned with the fact that she is in an alien spaceship or that B'Elanna is an alien. She's like, her entire concern is stop trying to fuck my man. And then
Yeah.
just storms out of the alien spaceship without the fucking word. Like, you stop trying to fuck my dude. And then leaves. These people are very straightforward as far as what they're perceiving. They're like they're the opposite of who watches the Watchers aliens, right? They're like, yeah, we don't care.
Mr. 90s hair treks off to the aforementioned crash landed Delta Flyer. This is, gosh, remember back once upon a time when we used to count shuttlecraft disasters?
Now, how many times has the Delta Flyer been rebuilt from its bones? It's just like the third time now. Because they got stuck in the meteor once, and then there was another crash. There was
with Tom and Naomi Wildman's mom, Samantha.
Yeah.
That one. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot. They actually do a pretty decent job dressing the setup. Like, it's at a goofy angle. You can see all the foliage outside the smashed-in windows. He's got the inside all done up like this gypsy tavern with like all these fucking candles. It's very sensual.
It seems like B'Elanna's about to go down for some me time. Is kind of the vibe you're getting in here.
Computer, replicate one bath bomb. But as you mentioned, yes, B'Elanna is tied up. And not just that, but her purple turtleneck left sleeves pulled up, and you see that she is trying to go across the road, not down the street.
She's tied up, so it's hard to like. They don't give you too much time to consider if it's like self-inflicted. Then you find out that he's been doing it, and then she wakes up, and she's like, "Why the fuck are you trying to stab me?" And he relates his Bronze Age medical understanding of, I must bleed you, for your blood is hot because of your fever.
That's not working for her. And she, I suppose in just about any other episode, yeah, this would have been a pretty bad situation, but no, he's got a very strong vested interest. He starts introducing himself. He shows that he can access the ship's logs. That's how he's been not plagiarizing, but finding inspiration. His muse,
adapted screenplaying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
is really what he's doing.
And he needs more because Emperor Fat Trek Fan wants more, and that is his meal ticket. And she's like, "Let me go," and he's like, "No." And eventually, she cons him into letting her to cutting her hands free. To which she grabs her phaser and shows us that on B'Elanna Torres away missions, phasers are by default set to disintegrate.
And I don't care that I now know that I am being confronted by a Bronze Age dirt farmer slash actor. I'm going to evaporate something with my space gun in front of him and tell him to fuck off.
This is the beginning of what will be a very long line of I don't care about the Prime Directives because Janeway showed me how to do things
Let,
by Belanators.
I think you're giving the episode far too much credit. The most ridiculous thing that happens here, the through line, is that the amount of times the Prime Directive is mentioned in this episode is fucking zero.
0.0.
0 times does B'Elanna or leader Harry Kim or anyone else mention B'Elanna. Why are you dramatically destroying the Prime Directive in front of they're literally making plays out of our logs. And spoiler alert, this episode concludes with a massive breach of the Prime Directive, blatantly for no reason aside from, but I want to.
When I'm trying to think, and again, I got to knock the cobwebs off. It's been so long since we've talked about Voyager. When's the last time they had one of those like everybody's gonna die and we're all gonna suffer terribly because God forbid we break the Prime Directive?
God, it's been a second. Well, so if you go all the way back to season 2, it was the Trabe and the Kazon like fight. The Prime Directive was being invoked a lot then, as a like, this is why we can't do the thing. I would say Equinox. That's a clear like Prime Directive breaking kind of situation. But that was also one where Voyager was always completely in the right. It wasn't really a conflict. It was these other Starfleet people
No.
are.
Well, let's just go back to Voyager stuck up in the atmosphere and it's ripping the planet apart.
Oh, yeah. The one where the planet's running at a completely different speed.
Yeah, I mean that was a very clear like we can't interfere with these people, and if it means staying in orbit and getting ripped apart, or us blowing the ship up, then that's something we need to entertain because we can't make direct contact.
Blink of an eye. Yeah.
Blink of an eye. I would say that's probably the closest one I can think of off the top of my rusty brain, but there is no concern for that given at all. Even in the scene where we have 90s hair encounter B'Elanna for the first time, like, yeah, there's the phaser incident. There's artificial light, which, when the ship kind of comes back on, he has her grab a dermal regenerator and she uses it in front of him and like heals all the knife wounds he's put on her. Like, I want the scene here to be like this guy to be like, hold on a second. This fucking little tube of toothpaste with a blinking light just completely healed all the wounds on her body. Like, I'm over here worried about how I'm going to make my next play. Maybe I need to just like pivot and become a medicine man guy now and like knife her in the face and neck area and then take this magic device and go heal all the wounds of my people.
It goes back to what we're talking about. If these guys are just so unimpressed or just so tunnel visioned on their world that he sees that and goes, okay, well, you are a god, so this totally makes sense. That's cool. Can I get more stories? Like he sees it, he comments on it, and when he comments on it is, well, this to be expected, for you were an eternal. He's literally like, okay, no, this is fine. This fits in my worldview actively.
My mom has yield cancer. Can you fix her, please? No,
there is no care.
Stories.
There is no care paid whatsoever by any character to this the fantastic nature of what he's seeing. And that is the most comedic thing that happens, is that this alien is just, yeah, okay, sure, you're a god. I need stories so that I can get trinkets out of my fat Star Trek fan. I don't think you understand how demanding this man is. He demands to be entertained every week, or I starve.
I could probably take this magic device and go like heal all his soldiers so as he wages a war of carnage across the landscape, which is what these Roman emperors are doing, right? The threat of war and suffering is always there. Like, instead of me just healing his dudes up and getting my people fed, we'll stick with the goddamn plan. It's worked in the past, it'll work in the future. Write stories, eat, continue. So she melts the tree. 90s hair dips out. And she thinks, all right, well, that worked well. Except it doesn't really. The next day, she's trying to work on the Delta Flyer. 90s hair shows back up with a bag full of nuts.
It's worth pointing out that the repairs to the Delta Flyer are not going well. She seems incapable, due to its current state, to be able to get a message to Voyager, which is her main focus. So she's buying time by getting this guy to continue to help her. Comes with food, wants some more story. Eventually, their bartering continues because of a need that she has for a piece of metal.
My favorite part of that is where the guy's like, hey, so what got Voyager stuck here? And she's just like, oh, the caretaker. Moops.
Just, it's the only time she realizes she might have said too much, you know?
She doesn't even like try to change. Oh, it's the Schmer takers, and Boobix is from planet Mulkin.
Yeah, he just kind of runs right into it and doesn't really say much about the fact that she just ran right into it. She raises her eyebrows and that's it. She tells the guy first to come go get dilithium crystals from like the fat Star Trek lord's like lands where he could be killed for going. So B'Elanna's really a total bitch to this guy the entire time. Like, I need dilithium. I could get murdered for getting it. Go get it if you want to not starve.
Have we ever really seen dilithium crystals handled by bare hands before?
It's like if it was would mutate you. I guess they've been in open air and manipulated by
I don't know. Listen,
hand
man,
tools.
it's Star Trek. There's always like fucking force fields in the most damnedest of places. I've never seen a peasant grab a piece of dilithium, put it in his lunch bag, and then run it into a crash shuttle. Like, I'm hoping that dilithium is non-toxic to touch. Otherwise, yes, real bitch move by B'Elanna.
And then tells him, go out and get this piece of metal with gold on it. And she's like, gold's expensive. I can't afford it. And she goes, you're going into debt. Go to a Greek loan shark and get me my thing that I need. And then he brings it back and she's like, this shit won't work. And just throws it down. Like, really ruins this guy's life. Starts interfering with his relationship with his girlfriend.
I want to jump back to Spirit Folk. That god-awful episode you somehow enjoyed.
I very much did, thank you.
And the effort the crew puts to protect the holographic toys from the truth.
Yes.
None of which shown to these guys as she derails their entire civilization as she gives them advanced.
B'Elanna didn't care about the hollow people either, so she doesn't care about these people.
She was ready to gas everybody to get her boyfriend back.
Yeah, B'Elanna has shown a dramatic lack of caring about others. And the only reason she seems to like get involved with them at all is just curiosity. Like, he invites her to come down to see what they're working on just because like nothing has worked so far for her and she just wants to take a break from all of her space sciencing. So goes down there, just looks like a Klingon, doesn't try and hide it, doesn't hide a rank insignia. It's just on her neck the entire time, you know.
The decorative brooch from the land across the sea.
No one mentions anything, and it's really just an opportunity for her to see a bunch of awkward scenes of slash fic of her coworkers that this guy has come up with so they can have more pointed commentary about writing for Star Trek.
Go back to Time and Again. The candy corn tragedy. Where an entire planet fucking dies in a nuclear holocaust because Janeway refuses to tell them, hey, this is what happens in the future. You guys are using dirty coal power. You can't do this. Janeway's ready to let that whole planet blow the fuck up. B'Elanna's in here giving Federation rundown for tin scraps.
Giving metallurgy advice, using high technology in front of Bronze Age people, eventually beams out in front of an audience for dramatic effect and nothing else. It's like she goes down there with the poet. They have the scene about how, you know, all the romance doesn't make a lot of sense and just doing things for the sake of doing things and not having a story idea behind it is wrong, which is really the writer talking at the audience. There's some mild sex eye between the two of them, but B'Elanna doesn't really like try to make a move on the guy.
Before that, I do enjoy Mr. 90s hair as he tries to direct his actors through portraying their characters, Tuvok in particular, and the
Yeah.
completely alien concept for this culture to believe that there could be an entity so devoid of emotion, and the concern. And again, I don't know if this is more like the writers' room and the production team talking to the audience, that portraying Vulcans is hard because either people aren't going to believe that this is feasible, or they're going to think that you're a bad actor who can't convey what is supposed to happen.
There are two levels to that scene that I thought were really interesting. One is the in-universe implication it makes, which is that, Kellis, Mr. 90's hair, he knows these things because this is what B'Elanna has told him about Tuvok. This is B'Elanna's opinion of Tuvok, which is that he does, in fact, have all of these emotions and they lie beneath the surface, and that she sees him and I would presume Vulcans in general as deeply tragic as a consequence of this sort of suppression of their emotions that they're forced to go through. That's the in-universe implication, which is interesting, right? Like these two have had a lot of interactions. She has been going to him for basically therapy, I guess you would call it, like calm the fuck down therapy. So there's good story reason for her to have this established perspective on Tuvok that's a little bit nuanced in depth, but not necessarily something we'd ever see her admit to because she's very guarded. The meta note is as you said, this is the writers talking to the audience about the idea of portraying a Vulcan, which is goes all the way back to Leonard Nimoy, dealing with the balance between showing emotion and not showing emotion, and what a touchstone that was to his performance, and how that came up a lot in classic Trek. Very, very interesting, and it's something that I never thought would work as well as it did in the episode, and wound up being one of my favorite moments.
I also like Mr. 90s hair's buy-in that he has seen, he understands it as a truth, and that he embraces it, and like the importance to him of staying loyal to the source material, and what I call in my notes the process of dragging normies into Star Trek,
Yeah,
and people who don't want to be there, like the thrashing and the questioning and the condemning of the story as to how preposterous it is. Like, if you don't want to buy into the stuff, it's such a hard pill to swallow.
and also it's rewarding for buying into. Like, if you do get it, then you get it, and it means a lot more to you.
Lots of shades of
Good.
Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, that scene was actually one where you could the episode would really turned on it, right? Like that scene working is why this ends up kind of like working as an episode. They get their point across in a way where you're like, okay, no, I get where you're going here.
While she is reviewing the material he has up into this point, as you've noted, there's a lot of gratuitous romance, and why do you have it so much in there? That's not the important part of that. The important part of that scene is that even this dude who's never met Chakotay or Janeway very clearly knows that Janeway and Chakotay want to bump uglies.
And that Tom Paris wants to get with both 77 of 9 and the Delaney sisters. Both accurate. So
Sign me up. Tom Paris knows what's up.
Yeah, Tom Paris has successfully identified several correct answers to the question.
I also want to shame Voyager for mentioning Delaney's sisters and not showing them to us.
Yeah, it's just that one taste we got, my friend. I know, such a waste.
Maybe
fantastic in their one scene.
I will choose to believe that in another timeline, Delaney's sisters were heavily featured and they just sucked. So,
oh, there you go. The one where the French lady played Janeway. After she leaves the stage and goes back to the Delta Flyer, that's when she has the awkward confrontation with the girlfriend who doesn't care she's a space alien, and then leaves after her dramatic monologue about how she's a homewrecker. And that's when Harry Kim suddenly shows back up. I really liked how excited B'Elanna was to see him.
Yes.
Uh, there has been cutaways. They do a good job with actually this part of the episode as well. There have been small, very brief cutaways back to Voyager throughout the episode of them trying to figure out what happened. There's almost no screen time or dialogue for Seven of Nine and Chakotay and Neelix and the Doctor. They're barely in it. Tuvok is barely in it. He's literally in it for a joke, for a single setup payoff, rim shot joke about him falling asleep on the captain's chair. And it's really just Janeway and Tom Paris reacting poorly to the news that that Harry and B'Elanna are missing. This is obviously devastating for Tom. That's his best friend and his girlfriend gone at the same time. He's inconsolable. He wants to find him.
Which one's his best friend?
Dealer's choice, my friend. This is the 24th century. I'm not going to judge Tom Paris whatsoever for which one's which.
I think we can very clearly say that Tom treats Harry much better than he treats B'Elanna.
That is true. And he's beside himself. The captain is poleaxed at the idea of having, potentially losing him. So there's this emotion that we just get little pieces where they're on the trail of trying to find him, but not a whole lot.
I think there's a lot to unpack in these Voyager shipboard scenes, the interior shots. There's a little bit of everybody's taking the news poorly, right?
Right.
Tuvok is burning the candle at both ends, and yes, as you mentioned, it's a joke we're building up to, but he says something like, Vulcans can go 14 days without sleep before there's a detriment. Because the one scene with Neelix kind of confronts him as, hey, listen, you need to chill out and take a break. Neelix starts leading on that he knows a little bit more about Vulcan physiology than most would know. Not that we would ever admit the fact that he was half Vulcan for 3 months.
Just you wait. I told you
in the 25th anniversary of the Tuvix incident.
Listen, I don't know how to tell you this. They do bring it up. It gets brought up.
It hasn't been brought up yet. So until that happens,
one time in this show, they bring it up.
I'm going to hold my breath.
I can't wait for you to experience it.
Me neither. I experience it in little increments all the time. I take my Tuvix acknowledgements where I can find them, and Neelix approaching Tuvok, who should be his friend at this point, yet mostly isn't. We see the crew's taking it rough, and I would say, as absurd as it is that these people down on Little Rome are seeing these fantastic technologies flaunted in front of them and nobody gives two shits about it. It's almost more jarring to see what's going on Voyager, where everybody actually cares for once. Too often in this show, we have people where the crew believes they're dead and they should be grieving, and it is so disingenuous and unconvincing. And this time, where goddamn well B'Elanna's alive down on the surface, I think that all the people up on Voyager really do a great job being bent out of shape and genuinely mourning the most likely death of their friends and crewmates.
Yeah, it's a rarity that you actually see them potentially entertaining the idea they're dead rather than rejecting it absurdly, right? They seem to accept the idea no, we're not going to find them. And we're looking because we have to look, but their expectations are not success, which is a different take.
It's a different take. And again, I feel like there's believable hurt in play.
And that adds to the relief when Harry shows back up on screen and you see B'Elanna, who is overjoyed at seeing who's also her best friend, her first friend on Voyager, and just does a great job of being very excited that he is alive. And then we find out that off screen, apparently, Ensign Harry Kim had himself a fucking episode. He had a whole fucking side quests he was doing that we can get to see, walking 200 miles in the dark, actually preserving the Prime Directive, trying not to be seen, hanging on to his equipment, trying to get back to the Delta Flyer, while B'Elanna's busy writing fucking poems and making sex eyes at the locals.
That's what is missing. Is there should have been conflict between him and Balana, where he's like, what you're doing here is not cool and a real fucking problem, and her doing something to defend her actions.
Yeah.
You don't get a lot of scenes where Harry Kim is in conflict with other crewmates, and I think this would have been a really good one.
There isn't an attempt by Harry Kim to really stop any of this or challenge it.
Yeah, he doesn't want his ass beat.
That's true. He knows what's going to happen if he tries to. Like,
He's
it's fine.
reviewed the holodeck logs for what happens in Cardassian murder bang cave, and he wants no part of it. He knows to steer clear. Janeway, they end up finding a merchant trading vessel that is able to relay the distress logs from the Delta Flyer, and that really kind of starts pounding nails in the coffin for the crew, thinking everybody's dead. Janeway reveals that she doesn't know how long someone can actually live in an escape pod, which is very, very troubling.
It sounds
for
like
the
some
number
shit
of times
you should know, Kathy.
for the number of times she's ordered people like, just get in the escape pods and we'll meet 2 solar systems over 6 weeks from now and regroup. Like, thank God no one's really ever taken up on the offer to abandon ship other than what, a Year of Hell.
Yeah, I think the only time it was quote unquote actually abandoned.
Yeah, well, all those people died in escape pods because she just dumped them out in the middle of nowhere, not knowing that people can't make it a fucking week in an escape pod.
The show must go on, fat Star Trek fan. And there isn't an ending, and the poet's been trying to figure it out. And Balana is attempting to find a way to get a stable communication with Voyager, but ultimately does succeed. That's where they finally have the payoff of the joke where Tuvok is napping in the chair because he's been working too hard trying to find them. And Paris has to do a hey Tuvok, wake up, and then he like startles awake and says, as you were, like it's this weird comedic beat in the middle of the episode that I'm not quite sure why they put it in. We didn't need the payoff to him staying up too much, but whatever. There's been worse things on this show. And while Balana is making all of her rescue stuff work, we are seeing more of the play as it's being portrayed. And the production, by the way, of the setup of the Greek area is very cool. It's not flashy, it's not expensive, but it sets the mood very well. It's kind of got that amphitheater feel. Everyone's kind of got period appropriate clothing on. The 2 jabronis who have swords in the back have the weirdest fucking helmets I've ever seen. Did you see those things?
Like Satan, what was Satan's robot level?
Yes, it looked like Satan's robot went to Eyes Wide Shut. Uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's the way the 90s hair tries closing this thing out is he really starts latching on to the idea of the Borg becoming antagonists in the play, the idea of a species of warriors with a queen flying around in their hives, and we get like the skeletal system of most Star Trek episodes tossed out there. Under great adversity and deadly foes, the Starfleet way is to make peace, not war. That there's always hope, and that if you're willing to extend that olive branch, that victory can still be achieved. Because fat Star Trek fan, fat Star Trek fan, he's got beef with all the other patrons, emperors, whatever you want to call them, governors around him. They're quick to war, and we find out that it's the little people that always get injured in these wars. And of course, the idea of dermally regenerating all the hurt people doesn't cross this guy's mind, but he believes that they might be able to avert war if he can make a powerful enough statement in his play that it chills the patron the fuck out, and instead of going to war, the guy, is willing to let bygones be bygones and whatever. He tells a cool little story that hundreds of years ago, the theater used to be a temple, and that there were human sacrifices once a year, and then one year there was a play instead, and ever since that, there hasn't been another human sacrifice because they were able to change the will of the patrons through art. So maybe there's some way where we can put Janeway at odds with the Queen of the Borg, which will be played by Seven of Nine, and we can bring this peaceful resolution to the patron and avert this bloodshed.
As I said from the top, like, it is a classic writers think that they're more important than they actually are type of ego moment, that this is the purpose of the plot ultimately. But okay, it does fit with the Trek utopian ideal of like this artistic endeavor could have this real impact on everyone's life. And sure, I'll buy it. It's not that far outside what you would accept for a normal Trek episode's sort of moral moment. What I cannot explain, what I cannot endorse, what I do not get is why B'Elanna Torres feels so driven to show up at the finale to help him finish the story. There's a lot of bits and pieces in here that are really good. The episode's not bad to watch, but this ending is just kind of like ridiculous. She decides, I've inspired this man, therefore I must help him finish his vision, right? Which, by the way, is a dramatic breach of the Prime Directive all on its own. Never mind only one or two people have seen your future tech. That's bad enough. And then never mind stories about what you were circulating as fiction that's clearly going to affect the civilization's development. You've already done enough bad stuff. You need to go. You need to get the fuck out of here. You can't fix any of that. The only thing you do is get the fuck out of there and hope like it fades into ancestral memory soon enough. But instead, she's going to go back. First time she went out of just curiosity to begin with. Now it's inexcusable. She's almost done getting out. She's going to site-to-site transport herself there without really explaining herself in any way, shape, or form so that she can, A, be exposed by the jealous lover, which she knew shit would happen because she came and told him. So we already is creating that danger for herself that she's going to be exposed as an alien in front of all these people. But then, just to put a fucking bow on it, I'm going to be beamed out by all of these people in front of them so that I can give this guy a good ending. They haven't had a real romantic connection. They've kind of had that hint, but they haven't developed it in a way that makes you think that that's a thing. Because why would they, right? They've invested so much in her being in the long-term relationship with Tom. They can't ruin that now. And there isn't like a science fiction reason to do it. It isn't that like this thing that she does at the end helps the utopian ideal of this place stopping the fucking war. So why are you doing this? It's a crime. You're also committing a Starfleet felony. You know, like, why are you doing this?
I mean, to be fair, she's still a terrorist at heart, right?
I mean, she hates rules. You know, she's like, I'm just gonna keep breaking the Prime Directives and just fuck them. I want to go to every Bronze Age dirt farming civilization and give them Glocks. We're gonna start everybody out right.
Yeah, it's the funny part to this episode is that she could have literally told this guy any story about any of her adventures, because like the funny part is every Voyager is a self-contained episode with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Like she could have been like, oh, all right, you need something so this guy doesn't give you a hard time and your people can continue. Well, sure, let me tell you about 3 Thursdays ago when we when we were being imposter and impersonated by some space grifters, and Janeway had to crack the whip on them, and how we came to like this peaceful resolution at the end. Like, I guess that's the funniest part, is like he needs this inspiring way to like bridge a gap and avert bloodshed, and space friendship is magic, and that's like every episode of Voyager. She could have told him any fucking work story and accomplished the goal of potentially inspiring the patron that did not involve her personally walking out on stage and transporting out by design. It's not even like it was an emergency and she had to dip. Like she's like, I'm gonna go in there and show off the transporter.
It is just such wild behavior as far as what you expect out of a Starfleet officer. And yes, as you noted, B'Elanna's a terrorist at heart.
Mm-hmm.
But there is just no reason given for this, and that's what makes it so ridiculous. And to have such a giant plot hole in your episode about the importance of dramatic writing is is just mwah, love it. But at the same time, very well shot, acting, all the performances, no problem. All of the ancient Greek people do a good job of,
Very good job,
yeah,
especially like the theater people acting that stuff off. Like whereas Beowulf was very community theater, like actual community theater felt I don't know, pretty highbrow. I liked it.
yeah. They portrayed the role of being ancient actors good, well, but then again, they're also actors, so not exactly asking a lot of actors to act like actors, just in a
Yeah.
period, in a kind of in a time period. Um, I compared to so much of what we had to watch in season 6, this is just fine. Like I could take a billion of these. It's kind of bizarre. There's some things that make absolutely no sense in it. Makes it interesting to talk about.
It's fun.
It's
Mr.
fun.
90s hair, I think that's part of why this is an enjoyable episode is this guy who is a central piece to the story does a great job. And, there's just some of these stories that if things were a little different could have been a chore to watch, but you get someone with a little charisma in there and I'm down for it.
Hold on, I'm gonna look something up here. I have a hunch. I'm wondering. I forget if this was. It's close. Shakespeare in Love was a film that came out in 1999.
Mm,
That's why this
classic
exists.
Voyager, ripped from
Just
the
ripped from the headlines.
silver screen.
Shakespeare. I was thinking to myself, like, what does this remind me of? And it reminds me of the movie Shakespeare in Love. And I'm like, wait a second, that came in the late 90s, didn't it? It
Yeah.
came out first in December 1998. So
Yeah.
about 14, 15 months before this episode. So you can see the writer saw this and like, we should do a Shakespeare in Love episode. Let's go write that out, bang that out when we start filming in the fall. And here it is in the spring. Poetry, man. It's poetry.
Well, we've had 2 good episodes in a row now for season sucks. Let's
I
see
would
if we
say
can go for 3. You would
we've
say
done more than that. Live Fast and Prosper was great. Good Shepherd was the one before that, which we did
lower
enjoy.
decks.
Yeah, the lowest decks. The one after that was Child's Play, which we liked. That was Hey, It's Crowley.
Oh yeah, we need to talk. The episode where they say we need to talk at least 8 times.
It's really the one before that, which is Ashes to Ashes, was a bit of a bump in the road.
I liked Ashes to Ashes
It came on the heels of
conceptually.
Spirit Folk, so you were ready to accept anything. But yeah, so we've had a few in a row here that were very good. What are we watching next week?
We're going into season 6, episode 23, Fury. And I got Balana and I got 7 and 9 standing in engineering. Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh. Those 3
Mm-hmm.
letters were forbidden from saying. She who now shall not be named, Kess, returns to Voyager, aged, angry, and more powerful than ever. She tears through the ship and then travels back in time to try and alter her history. Spoilers! Netflix fucking spoilers. Come on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, it's not revealing too much. It's literally all shit that happens in Act 1. Like that happens before you get a third of the way through the episode.
I am excited for this. I am still looking forward to Delta Flyers trying to explain why Garrett stayed and Jennifer Lean was dropped. I'm curious what it took to bring her back on. And I am very, very fond of 90s Jennifer Lean and Kess, the portrayal of. I'm very excited to see if she's able to come back this late in the game and still bring the magic.
This episode is completely fucking wild to me. That they decided to bring back Kess, and this is the story they wound up telling. I couldn't believe it. I'm excited to watch it again because I did not like it at the time, but maybe I will have a lot more appreciation for it given the way that
I,
we've consumed the show over the last few years.
I don't want you to answer anything. I just want to throw my thoughts out. I wonder if this is designed to be like a smear piece, like if Kess is going to be redeemed by the end. They'd have to. I mean, you can't just run a former major character into the dirt and make their like last appearance a shitbaggy evil one. Like, what a Pandora's box. I'm excited for this one. I'm really, man, what are they gonna do?
Well, we'll find out together next week, sir. Well,
If they make her a piece of shit and she's just a bad, like the dilemma, and the crew has to outsmart her and escape her, and they just fly away with her, in the sunset, that's gonna put me in a real bad mood.
there is an arc here, and I can't wait for you to see it. I'm genuinely excited to get your take.
Kess and time travel.
It's like peanut butter and poop. That it's just
is
two things that don't belong together.
Is the temporal directive agency going to show up and like try and fight Super Saiyan Kess? What's that one guy's name? Time Cop, Captain Caveman. What's his name?
Yeah, Captain Caveman. He's Captain.
Well,
Caveman.
he got locked up last time.
Yeah, he's
arrested.
In time jail now.
He got arrested for pre-crimes.
Well, what is not a pre-crime is listening to Feed Your Please, a Hateful Voyage to the Delta Quadrant. We appreciate that you guys hung in there for us while we were away. We hope we enjoyed the Lower Decks review that we first did with our patrons, but made available to everyone last week. We got our next one planned for our lovely patrons. Peter and I are going to review the PSG movie, the Battlestar Galactica movie.
Razor.
We're really looking forward to it, actually, so we'll be taking care of that sometime this spring and make that available to all of you. If you would like to support us on Patreon just to pay for all of our subscription fees, we appreciate it. But if not, that's cool. Listen along. Email us at vjplease@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter, or you can find us on Facebook at vjplease, or more importantly at our discussion group, the VJPlease Trauma Support Group. Love to see you there as well. And until then, see ya.